Hey there, friend. Welcome back to Daily Dose Radio here in the Bible Bistro. I am so very glad that you've joined me today. Thank you for tuning in to Daily Dose Radio. This is what I do every day, 5 days a week, studying the Psalms verse by verse. So if you want to study the Psalms, just jump right in here to Daily Dose Radio here in the Bible Bistro. And we're going to study the Psalms today in Psalm 18. Now, I said last week that Psalm 18 is David's magnum opus. It's the great song that he wrote. And the reason I say that is because you see so many parts of Psalm 18 in other places in the Psalms, other Psalms that David wrote, and even Psalms that David didn't write. These words that David writes here, they really sort of infect the entire book of the Psalms in a good way. My heart is inditing in a precious matter. And so David does that here. He says some things that just kind of leak out into all the rest of the Psalms. It's wonderful. Now, last week we studied 1 through 10. This week, 11 through 20. And we're going to make our way through the entire Psalm and then take a break for a couple of weeks and come back in 2026 and pick up in Psalm 19. So, here we are in Psalm 18. Let's read today verses 11 and 12. He made darkness his secret place. His pavilion round about him were dark waters and thick clouds of the skies. At the brightness that was before him, his thick clouds passed, hailstones and coals of fire. Okay. So what's going on here? This is the theophany of prayer. David has prayed. He prayed back there in, what was it, let me turn my page back and I'll look real quick. He said his prayer, verse 6, he says, "In my distress I called on the Lord." So he tells us about his distress. Then he tells us that he prayed. And then what we have is God moving. He acts. And beginning there in verse 7, the earth shook. So all of it from 7 now all the way now till we get to verse 11, we have the Lord's theophany. He's heard the prayer and now he's acting. And it's just not David's prayer. It's our prayer. When we pray, he acts. And he's not some kind of heavenly delivery boy. No, but he acts on behalf of his saints. Sometimes he acts in their behalf, which has nothing at all to do with what they prayed for, because he knows best. And let him know best. He's the wise king over his people. Let him act in wisdom and righteousness for us, even when it's not something that we even ever considered to pray about. So David prays, and the earth shakes, and he comes down. We talked about the condescension of Christ last week, and now we see him set up his battle pavilion. His grand pavilion. Now, if you're looking at the YouTube page, because these are on YouTube as well as Spreaker and all the rest of the places where they go out, on the YouTube page I have a thumbnail that's basically a circus tent in a field. It's the closest thing I could get to a grand pavilion. Well, when the kings went out for battle, they would build these grand pavilions of tents for the king to live in and to hold his court. And the court went with him, and there's probably some of the queen's court went with him as well, and so forth. And they would have these grand pavilions, and the pavilion of the king would be somewhere far away from the battle. But with him were all the elements, all the symbolism of warfare. And so he would build this thing and there hold court. And for example, whenever there was a victory, the kings who lost would be brought and appear before the victorious king in his pavilion. So here we have God coming down, riding on a cherub, and then he builds this pavilion. He made darkness his secret place. His pavilion round about him were dark waters and thick clouds of the sky. So our God doesn't use canvas to build his pavilion. No, he uses the elements of creation, the dark waters and the thick clouds. And then notice verse 12. At the brightness that was before him, his thick clouds passed, hailstones and coals of fire. So you have this circling around him, all this brightness, darkness, hailstones, coals of fire, all of it surrounding him because he's preparing for battle. He's heard the prayer, and God is on the march. He's on the march in David's life, all the way back here when he wrote Psalm 18, when God gave him rest from all of his enemies. David wrote this psalm, and he, ladies and gentlemen, does the same for us when we pray. He's on the march. He has heard your prayer. Cry out to him today. Cry out to him today and tell him what the enemy's done. Tell him how you're distressed. Tell him about the wicked men that have laid traps for you. Tell him all of it, every bit of it. And you know what? You'll see God will come on the march to your rescue. All right, that's 11 and 12. Tomorrow we're going to look at verses 13 and 14. So join me then here on Daily Dose Radio.